a lot of undergo a lot of modifications. Every year there is a version of a given style. So sticking to one version may not mean that you are abiding by the rules of APA or MLA or Chicago or whatever, because these are subject to continuous updates. And therefore, as I said, so I think my response was clear. Pay attention when you quote directly. So here the page number is necessary. Thank you. Si Mustafa, it's clear, says. Si Muhammad, Si Muhammad. Si Muhammad, how are you? I hope you're doing well. So glad that you are among us this evening. Thank you very much. So we have 23 people here. Are there questions that you think we would like to answer? Before I see some hearts coming up, which means that there are people who are, sending me hearts or just clicking on the heart in appreciation of what is being delivered. That's very good. Thank you very much. That encourages the page algorithms to activate and to reach maybe more people. Okay, Si Mustafa Morshid is asking a question. In what way, and then he says S, ways, does syntactic grammatical knowledge help one in their teaching career or even in speaking, writing? I just want you to tackle the practical or pedagogical side of syntax. Thank you. Wow, this is an excellent question, Si Mustafa. An excellent question that only a professional would ask. Now, when we deal with syntax, phonology, semantics, pragmatics at a theoretical level, that's linguistics, qua-linguistics. In other words, we are at the university, we cover these issues from a theoretical standpoint with the sole purpose of knowing about the theory and putting these concepts into practice when we are given exercises, and it stops there. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a in applied linguistics, second language acquisition in particular, there is a type of grammar that is referred to as pedagogic grammar. And this pedagogic grammar, it's close to what you do in grammar 3. But when it comes to morpho syntax, there might be also pedagogical grammar for phonology, for semantics, and for pragmatics. It's one way of bridging the gap. It's one way of bridging the gap, so to speak, between theory and pedagogy. It's what you do in class. Textbooks normally should get inspired from these books that fall under the heading of pedagogical grammars. It's between theory, you explain why. There needs to be an explanation as to why this happened, and maybe concerns about its teaching and its acquisition. And it's a simplification of these theoretical, explanations that that we learn at the university. So this is very interesting. Of course, grammatical knowledge, I would call it also, in our case as teachers, we need to be equipped with some meta knowledge. Why? Because if you think that I'm talking about the students here, the doctoral students and the ones who intend to have a career in teaching, yes, you will be given books to use. You may have a book with exercises and with a key. You may have a teacher's book that will help you, for example, with how to explain, how to proceed. But this does not make the teacher a robot. There is always this need for a teacher. What makes a teacher is what makes a teacher different from some robotic use of a robotic agent that uses the textbook and to deliver the content is the fact that this teacher is equipped, number one, with meta knowledge. That is to say, explicit knowledge about the rules of pronunciation, of grammar, of maybe vocabulary, and the different components of a word and how a word is formed, things like these. This is linguistic knowledge. This is linguistic meta knowledge that we need to have. Why should we be equipped with this? And this is a message also for students in cultural studies and the students who may not be immediately concerned with linguistics in their studies, but as teachers, you definitely need to have your share of this type of knowledge. After all, if you are hired at a higher education institution, you will not teach what you wrote your thesis on necessarily. You may teach courses that are related to those content courses, but you will certainly be assigned, and this is what we all do. I'm very happy when I'm assigned S1 or S2. No problem. Where's the problem? I'm saying this because I heard that some teachers are asking for S6, S5, master. Why? Anyway, I close this bracket. So if you are assigned spoken English, for example, then you have to know something about phonetics, even if you did cultural studies and everything. If you are assigned grammar, you should know why, for example, certain rules are the way they are. In other words, for example, inversion and just inversion. How many teachers, for example, teach the process of inversion in a correct way? It's the most difficult thing for the most difficult, statement a student can hear is "it's like that." There need to be some ability of the teacher, the part of the teacher to explain these things. Of course, many teachers do that in a very nice way. And I'm just saying this. I'm not saying that there are teachers who do that. No, the teachers I know are all, at it, and they all do their work in the most appropriate way they can. But say Mustafa, I insist on the fact that this is just a message. I insist on the fact that some knowledge in the field of linguistics is required, if at least this pedagogic grammar thing. There are certain concepts that even a teacher, for example, phonetic transcription, is it just the task of somebody who did linguistics? No, it's not. Basic descriptions, for example, if the student asks you this innocent question as to why is it that we pronounce table with z and light with s, lights but tables, and why is it that horses is horses, not horses? If one way of answering this student is that native speakers do it like that, so we have to do it like that. But a better, more professional way of doing it is try to explain to them the notion of voiced, voiceless. As you can see, in phonology, voiced, voiceless are terms that can be taken for granted. So at the university, in the course of phonology, you don't need to explain what voiced and voiceless is, because they are taken for you know them. But for student, no, you cannot tell them voiced, voiceless, and then leave. No, you have to find a way of explaining to them that when you have a last consonant, for example, for a noun, when you put your finger here and you feel there is a vibration, and because when you pronounce z is vibrated, so the s becomes z when you have vibration there. So anyway, I'm saying it in this way. It may be a bit confusing, but I'm just trying to suggest one of the many ways you can explain concepts like these to your students. All in all, Mustafa, your question is really, really to the point. Yes, teachers need to be equipped with enough linguistic knowledge, okay, to know just basic concepts, to know what a prefix is, a suffix is, to know what maybe a bound morpheme is, a free morpheme is. There are textbooks that nicely present these things. You can read through them without necessarily being a specialist. The worst that can happen to a teacher is when they are asked by students a question. They want an explanation of something in grammar, in spoken English, or even in writing, for example. For example, why is, let me tell you this, and I am asked this question so often. Teacher, but why? How can you answer them? For example, you have so many students, so we'll come to these things if you wish later on. So many students would start a sentence with, so they write something, they put a full stop, and they write, for instance, or for example, comma, and then, for example, what they write something like, what happened last year in that city, a given city, let me not name it. You understand? For example, what happened last year in that city, and then they put a full stop. When you come to tell them that this is a sentence fragment, they say, teacher, why? So this, if you have enough linguistic background, I'm not saying advanced, no, enough linguistic background, enough linguistic meta-knowledge, then you go to the definition of a sentence. You can tell the student, for example, that the sentence is a sentence only when you can identify a subject and a predicate, a subject and a verb, what goes with it. This is just one single example. Okay. All in all, this is Mustafa. Yeah, I answer in the affirmative. Teachers need to be equipped with this grammatical knowledge, and it's preferable to consult some textbooks, that fall under this pedagogic grammar thing. There are a pedagogical grammar of English, for example. You have maybe some or grammar for the English language teacher. I came across, I'm not saying the precise title, but I came across books like these that bridge the gap between what is highly theoretical and what is very practical. So it's trying to be in the middle. Okay, this is called pedagogic grammar, and it spans all levels of linguistic analysis. Mr. Abdullah, okay, Mr. Abdullah Shakra says, could you please, dear professor, tell us about the size of the page, right, left, up, down in research? This will heavily depend on the template that you are given by your institution, because we do not use the same cover page. We don't say, and this, you talk to this. With the supervisor, because he may suggest some spacing that is different from the one that another would suggest, etc. My answer is that, to the best of my knowledge, there is no real, unified template that is a one size fits all. So please check. I think to a large extent that this will depend on institutions. The way, just think of the cover page. Just think of the use of colors on the cover page. Some institutions may encourage that. Some institutions will say, no, I just need black and white, and so on and so forth. So, Si Mohammed, where is our friend here? Yeah, Si Mohammed, Si Abdullah, sorry, Si Abdullah Shakra. I think you need to refer to your institution to check, for example, the theses that were defended before, and then you will have insight into that. All right, Mustafa Murshid, meta language is necessary. That's true. That's true. So that was in reaction to something I said before. Si Zakaria Tahiri. Zakaria Dahiri. Sir, I am teaching syntax. I am at government and binding. GB here, government and binding, okay? And it's not yet the stage to discuss cartography. Please suggest how to explain the notion of topicalization in the CP. Before you talk about topicalization in the CP, the students need to know about the basic sentence structure. I always tell my students that it's not a good idea to start with what is complex. So as teachers, always start with the things that you think, the elements that you think your students will understand without any endeavor, without any without any difficulty. So they will listen to you, they will understand, they will do the exercise, and then you build on that. Now, topicalization. So, see, Zakaria, topicalization, it can be a process. First, we have topicalization. We need to distinguish between topicalization as a process. Topicalization is a process. ذهب الولد إلى المدرسة. الولد ذهب إلى المدرسة. It can be argued that the different word orders here are due to the issue of topicalization. And there is the same thing, we have the same, there is the same phenomenon in the Amazigh language. يروح حضر المدرسة أم حضر يروح المدرسة. I'm using terrifit here by virtue of being a native speaker of the variety. But you can say إدّا ومحضر or إفتا. All depends. Anyway, this is topicalization here is a process, and it's a sort of movement process whose motivation is highly discursive. Discursive because we want to. I'm sorry, I use discursive. I have to add to open another bracket here. There are two terms in that you can hear in your lifetime as a student at the university. There is the word discursive and the word discoursal. Both of them come from discourse, but discursive has more to do with discursive practices. For example, the discursive, tone of a given novel. In other words, it's general. Discoursal is a bit technical, and it's related to the conversational context when you treat a syntactic phenomenon. So let me just close the bracket. Let's go back to topicalization. Topicalization is a process that helps bring into focus an element. Okay, that can have a paraphrase like "it is so and so who did this." There is a difference between Muhammad did something and it was Muhammad who did something. Here you can clearly see that in the second sentence we are focused. We have this "it is" structure in English only because English does not allow word order. But in English, in Arabic, for example, ذهب محمد ذهب. So here, when you start with the subject, you are bringing into focus this noun phrase. Now, for just to go again to the question made by C. Zakaria, by Ustad Zakaria. Okay. Please suggest how to explain the notion of topicalization within the CP. So first, you need to introduce your students to the regular structure of a normal CP that does not involve topicalization. This is what we call the canonical structure. And then, you can tell them, I'm summing up what you can tell them, that, due to certain requirements that are discursive in nature, and you explain this as a movement process. You explain that as a movement process. The NP has moved from, for example, from the specifier of an aspect phrase, or it depends on the approach you are taking to represent info, and it is topicalized. You need to account for it, perhaps in terms of some features like plus force. You have that. Honestly, in my S5 course, I do not touch on this issue because the main objective is that students need to understand, how to represent a CP in using the X-bar architecture, and also to be familiar with the main movements like NP movement, WH movement, and I to C movement. Okay, thank you very much, my friend C. Zakaria. I wish you all the best. And okay, so you can send me a message in the private because I don't know where you teach exactly. So we may share, books and articles and ideas also. Why not? Thank you very much. Si Mohammed Al-Haddoushi. Hello there, Professor. Could you please provide an overview of the sequential and exploratory research methods, including their main steps, purposes? Yes. So this is very interesting because I feel that I have been focusing more on quantitative data analysis in the previous videos I uploaded, on this platform on YouTube. But to do justice to the other side, so we need to also talk about qualitative data analysis. So I would prefer Si Mohammed Al-Haddoushi in the, at my earliest convenience, I will, reserve a whole live session to talk about it. This way, we will have enough time to exchange, ideas in the form of question and answer. Thank you very much. So, because to do it here will certainly take us hours to discuss the whole thing. Alhamdulillah. Okay, nice. Mohammed Al-Azraq. Hello, Professor. Thank you again for the initiative questions. What are the qualities of a strong abstract? Is it necessary to reformulate research hypotheses as research questions? Thank you very much. Okay, very quickly, Si Mohammed Al-Azraq, you are asking a question. You have a top-ranked question. One about the abstract and its structure, and the other one is about the relation that needs to be, to exist between a research question and a hypothesis, and for that matter, hypotheses. Nice. So let's start with the abstract. All too often, ladies and gentlemen, students make mistakes. By students, I mean researchers, the ones who submit their theses for defense. You see, sorry, excuse me. When you open, you go to the first page, you read the abstract. The abstract is, let me tell you, it's the first impression is the title. Let's not forget that. But then the abstract completes the picture as to what type of research you have, what what issue are you pursuing here? You are investigating, sorry, and what methodology you have adopted and what results. In other words, in the abstract, you have to make sure, number one, to include all, let me say, not all and only. It's different from all. All and only, the core aspects, it's the skeleton, in other words. It's the skeleton of the whole thesis needs to be summarized in the abstract. And therefore, an abstract which is a 2-page abstract, I'm sorry, this is not a good one. An abstract which has more than 1 paragraph, to have 3 paragraphs in the abstract, no, it's not a good abstract at all. So an abstract that starts with introductions that are far-fetched, and then after maybe a full paragraph, you come to the point, our objective, etc. No, it's not reader friendly, and it's not good anyway. So a good thesis abstract, and for that matter, research paper abstract or article abstract, whatever, go to the point. Go to the point. Call a spade, appelle un chat, un chat. C'est-à-dire, in an abstract, there are 3 basic elements that I need to know. As a reader, I need to know 3 things about your work. I need to know, number 1, what you are after. What are you going to investigate here? This should be, seen at the beginning, and these are your objectives. That's number 1. Number 2, I know now that you have your objectives. How did you go about analyzing your data? And of course, included here is the nature of your data also. What type of data you have, what type of approach. That's very briefly in single sentences. Sometimes you can merge 2 or 3 points in one sentence. Okay? So you need to talk about your data. You need to talk about how you collected your data. So that's methodology. Maybe you refer to also here, we include the instruments you used, the participants, but you need to find a way of making it as parsimonious as possible. Okay, so I repeat, number 1, what are you after? That is to say, your objectives. I have to see your objectives there. Immediately after, what did you do, okay, to pursue these objectives, to go about, for example, investigating what you purport to investigate. And now, methodology. It includes, among other things, your instruments, your participants, your data analysis method. All these can be referred to as methodology. Then comes the other point. The third most important point is a summary of your results. Automatically and directly, after you are done in a couple of sentences or so, when you describe your methodology, go to the findings. And if you have implications, refer to them very briefly. Other than this, I'm sorry, the abstract will not be reader friendly. And make sure, I don't know if that's why I'm telling you time and again that this culture of attending thesis defenses is of paramount importance, because they teach you what your supervisor may not teach you, because it will teach you what you may not have been taught before. Let's not generalize, of course. I know that there are people, we all make effort to, but there are things that students seem to forget. You see? So when you go, when you attend the thesis defense and you find out that every thesis defense you attend, people make comments about the abstract, it means that there is a general problem. It means that we have this, I don't know, this is something we have inherited maybe from other languages, I don't know. But we do believe, wrongly of course, that the longer the abstract, the better I am as a researcher. No, that's not the case. It's the more accurate and the more to the point your abstract is, the better you show you are as a researcher. Fine. So the abstract has to include these 3 elements, and don't shy away from writing 1 paragraph. What's the problem, ladies and gentlemen? That's the right way of doing it. 2, 3 pages in the abstract? No, that's a summary. That's a summary. And worse still, there are even theses where you find that the researcher, for example, says in chapter 1, in chapter 2, in chapter... No. An abstract is the summary, ماشي ديال thesis. It's not a summary of the thesis, it's a summary of the study, not of the thesis. A summary of the dissertation, is the last element in your introduction. This dissertation is organized as follows. In chapter 1, I have this. In chapter 2, I have this. In chapter 3, I have this. This is a summary of the dissertation. The difference is that the dissertation is what is written down. It's the way you report on the study. The study is just a process. You get the point. So the abstract is a summary of your study, not of your dissertation. I hope you understand my point. I hope it's clear. Okay, now, sorry, I'll go back to the comment asked by, so the question asked by C. Mohammed Lazraq. I answered part of it, the first part. The second part, is it necessary to reformulate a research hypothesis as the research questions? Look, one thing which is clear is this. Especially in quantitative data analysis, in a quantitative study. Why am I'm saying quantitative study? Because there is a disagreement about the place of hypotheses. But in a typical study where you have research questions, hypotheses, and objectives, it's enough for you to think up your objectives. And by the way, you have to spend enough time and enough energy thinking up your objectives. 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't go beyond 4, please. Okay. So once you have done that, it will be easier for you to derive your hypotheses. And of course, to formulate also your research questions. The difference between research questions and hypotheses, ladies and gentlemen, is that research questions are somehow more general, more encompassing. Hypotheses are, ways of breaking down research questions into one way of detailing, aspects of that research question. That's the reason why it's more natural to have a higher number of hypotheses than research questions than vice versa. That is to say, you may not, it's not normal to have, for example, 3 hypotheses with 5 research questions, but you may have 3 research questions with 5 hypotheses. You understand? So it's one way of narrowing down the thing. So your objectives will feed your research questions, and your research questions will feed your hypotheses. It's there is this tight connection between the 3. Now, about reformulation, please don't make this mistake, my dear friends. When you formulate your hypotheses and research questions in your introduction and also your objectives, do not change the phrasing. I dare say copy, paste. When you reformulate, it's you reiterate rather than you reformulate. Because in your formulate, you are supposed to paraphrase. And paraphrasing may result in using words that do not fit, even if they may be synonyms. We have to be very careful. So it's copy, paste. That's the scientific method. Because a word can turn out to be a variable that will, spoil everything. Okay, so I hope I am clear, on this. Thank you, C. Mohammed, for asking this question. C. Zakaria, Thank you so much, Professor. Marhaba, C. Zakaria. Thank you. Okay, a message has been retracted from Mr. Haddouchi. God knows what he wanted to say. Okay, Mohammed Haddouchi, sure. Thank you so much, Professor. Marhaba, C. Mohammed. Thank you. C. Mustafa, it is also advisable to avoid citations in the abstract. That's true. That's true. Citations and also what's that? Documenting something. For example, like mentioning authors' names and the date in the abstract. No. Thank you. All right. So Mustafa, it is also discuss the pedagogical side of one study in the abstract. Yes, along with the recommendations, but please do not dwell on this. Why? It's because the recommendations and the pedagogical uses, etc., are only offshoots of the study, but the core part is the study. So what is usually done, and this is what I recommend, what everyone would recommend, is after you mention your results, append your paragraph the one paragraph abstract. That's the ideal, even if it may be a bit lengthy, but it still needs to come as one block. So it's better to end it with a sentence. The study has implications to theory, classroom management. I'm just speaking, off the top of my head, classroom management and language policy, something like this. And the interested reader, of course, will go and read about these implications, which usually come in the conclusion part. All right. Nice. Thank you. So outline of the study, overview of the study, the structure of the study. Yeah, you are using, Si Mustafa, you are using 3 ways of introducing the structure of a dissertation at the end of the introduction. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions? Someone here, Team Game says, could you please talk about hypothesis formation in qualitative study? And is it true that you can conduct a qualitative study without hypothesis with the intent of generating hypothesis? That's true. That's true, Mr. TM Games, that's true. In a typical qualitative study, the hypothesis is generated at the end. Let me give you an example. Because when you hypothesize, let me say that, when you formulate a clear hypothesis, especially those hypotheses that come in the form of a declarative sentence and they bear some guesses, it means what? It means that you will have an experiment to run or a statistical measure to run on the basis of which you will prove or disprove the hypothesis. And to each of these hypotheses corresponds a null hypothesis, which is the logical opposite. For example, if they say that group 1 and group 2 will show differences, the null hypothesis that group 1 and group 2 will not show any difference. But we don't have this in qualitative data analysis. Let's just imagine that you are working, for example, on an approach, maybe let's say a given novel in literature, for example. I'm sorry, I apologize to my colleagues in the field of literature, but I will just touch on this example and leave. Okay, I'm really sorry, but this is what is done normally. You have a novel, for example, and you can read it from 2 perspectives: the perspective of this theory, maybe feminist criticism, and the perspective maybe of Marxist criticism or whatever. You have this post-structuralist criticism. I don't know, but you may read it from the 2 perspectives. Then you may compare these approaches in your analysis, and you will generate a hypothesis that analyzing this novel, can generate, for example, more, lessons, more conclusions, better conclusions when you adopt this approach. Ou bien, so we have this. You can conclude that the supremacy of this approach over this. Okay. Which means that the supremacy, so approach number 1, let's say feminist criticism, is argued to be a better approach for analyzing this literary text than the other one. Now, let me move to linguistics. Exactly the same thing. For example, when you have a theoretical model, let's say transformative, let's say generative, let's say government and binding theory, and you analyze your data using both approaches, both government and binding theory and optimality theory, and later on you conclude that the one that uses optimality theory maybe is more or supersedes the one that uses, or vice versa. You can show the limitations of OT as well. It's not that it's recent, that it's a perfect theory, no. Or you can do it by comparing, the basic paradigms, for example, functionalism versus generativism. This data set yields better results, or this problem can be solved using the functionalist perspective rather than generative perspective, or vice versa. So all in all, yes, in a study that is qualitative, hypotheses are typically generated at the end. So the conclusions I have been talking about, like the supremacy of an approach on the other, can take the form of a hypothesis. So that someone after you will come and will start from your conclusion, and they will, embark on further investigations, and they will either prove you right or wrong. So these are hypotheses are generated in when you use a qualitative approach. What is for sure is that the hypotheses are not formulated in the same way. Okay, but if there are some researchers who express their hypothesis at the beginning, and this usually comes in the form of a section or a paragraph rather than in a sentence that is dry, like what is done in quantitative data analysis. Okay, nice. Why? It's because there are variables that we need to define ahead of time in doing quantitative analysis, and our task as researchers is to either compare or check the relation between the two, or check the impact, and so on and so forth. All right. I hope I have provided elements of the answer to Tim Kane's question. So Mustafa, grand theory versus grounded theory. That's absolutely right. So when you use grounded theory, then of course, you do what I have just talked about, especially using the example from linguistics. Nathalie Leblanc says, is it better to combine qualitative approach and quantitative approach in my research? Yes, this is highly desirable, especially if the real use of what we call a mixed method approach, the real use of what we call triangulation, la triangulation. Triangulation means you have like a triangle. Triangulation, for those of you who hear this for the first time, triangulation is the attempt on the part of the researcher to look at a phenomenon from multiple perspectives. So it's a good idea. Like, let's say that you measure a special type of behavior from students, that displayed among students. You can use the quantitative approach, and you can analyze the same thing using qualitative approach. That's the real use of a mixed method. But sometimes in a piece of research, you have maybe two hypotheses. You can analyze one qualitatively, and you can analyze the other quantitatively. So in order to answer Nathalie Leblanc's question, is it better to combine? I'm not, it's better. It's good. It's good to combine, but this will depend on the nature of your topic. And this will also depend on whether you're, for example, when you have an experimental design, a thesis that is couched within this, optic of experimentation. So you'll adopt an experimental design or quasi-experimental design. If you have qualitative data, it will just be there to supplement your quantitative, approach. So yes, it's possible. It's possible, but I will not say it's better. It's possible. Yes, it's possible to do that. And whether it's better or not will depend on the nature of your objective, the main, the main aim of your study or of your thesis. Nice. These are nice questions. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, maybe in the absence of further questions, we can move to the discussion of our main point. Okay, you are welcome, Nathalie. Thank you. I think it's time for this board to be used. Okay, so let me talk about where we stopped the other day. Now, if you have questions, ladies and gentlemen, if you think of any question, then we can afford some time after the main point has been discussed. Now, today we are going to talk about the complement of the CP, or the C-zero, sorry. Notice, please, that for any sentence, for any declarative sentence, we made the point the other day that the complementizer is part and parcel, okay, of, a clause. A clause without a complementizer is not a clause. Why? Because complementizers, as I told you before, as you know very well, this is just a revision, a complementizer has at least two properties. A complementizer can tell us whether the clause that follows, that clause in which it exists, or the one that it introduces, is finite or non-finite. And it can also tell us whether that clause is an interrogative or not. So we have a complementizer having the features of plus or minus finite, and having the other feature of plus or minus WH. WH refers to interrogative. WH makes us think of WH phrases, where, when, how, which means that it's a question. So a complementizer with plus WH means that we have an interrogative. And by the way, there is a slight difference between an interrogative and a question. A question is always direct and, has a question mark at the end. An interrogative, is also a question, but we can distinguish between a direct interrogative, which means it's a question, and an indirect interrogative, like what we have in reported speech. All in all, a complementizer is an element in a clause that does these two functions. That's one argument. The other argument is that there are languages where the complementizer is visible, like, for example, Arabic, where you have inna and then you have, at the beginning, which means that it may have, this complementizer may have atrophied in languages over history, but they have kept their syntactic function. They no longer appear. We have some residues even in English. You see, let me give you an example. And by the way, this is good to use in your writing if you want to impress your readers. You see? For instance, I can make this sentence, okay? It is unlikely to rain. That's one way of doing it. That's why we're expressing it. It's unlikely to rain. Another, maybe more sophisticated way is a sentence where you have an overt complementizer. You listen to this. That it will rain is highly unlikely. So you have that plus clause. All of this is a subject, and then you have is highly unlikely. Okay? That your friend is hardworking is obvious. Okay? That the people watching this live are, let me call you, nice and and competent is evident. Why? Because they come and spend their time, watching this live. So these are pieces of evidence, and the fact that we have this means this complementizer that at the beginning of a sentence in English, it means that perhaps it's a historical residue. Maybe historically, maybe in the proto version of the language, the complementizer was always there. I did not read about it, but I just surmise that this is the case. Okay? But the fact that we have it in Arabic shows that there are languages or is indication that, okay, that it is a necessary component of the sentence together with these two functions that I talked to you about. It's the reason why we generalize this by saying that every single sentence, what we traditionally refer to as a sentence, a one-clause sentence, okay, is a CP. In fact, wherever there is a clause, we can call it a complementizer phrase. Why? Because every single clause can either be finite or non-finite. Every single clause can be either plus or minus WH, which means that there is something that makes them this way. Okay? Which means that there is a complementizer that is doing the work. All right? So a clause as simple as I will travel. Is this a clause? Yes, it is. How do we know? This is a revision for those of you who don't know what a clause is. We have a noun phrase here and a verb phrase here. This is a noun phrase because you can replace it with my friend, with a real noun phrase. And of course you have, a verb here, which means that this is a complementizer phrase. You may tell me, why do we call it a complementizer phrase when there is no complementizer that is seen? I can tell you there are two arguments. Number one, maybe the historical argument that we have that somewhere here, like that your friend is happy, etc. And you have an external evidence coming from languages like Arabic, but you also have these very important functions. For example, in reading this sentence, we know that this verb is conjugated. We know that this is finite. What is it that tells us whether this is finite or not? It's the complementizer. You remember last week when we talked about if and whether and for and that, and we saw that different complementizers will dictate different forms of the CP. So this is the case. Okay, nice. So here we have a C double bar for this sentence, and for that matter, for any declarative sentence, you have a C double bar. We talked about the spec of the C double bar, and we said that it's empty. It's there only to receive moved WH phrases. Then you have, because you have a double bar here, you have to have a bar for obvious reasons, like NP, N bar, VP, V bar. And then you have a C0 here. This C0 can be filled if there is an overt. Overt means visible, like when you have that or anna explicitly in Arabic and English. Okay, here I think that you are nice, that has to be here. In this case, it's an overt complementizer. But we don't have anything. It's syntactically there. Why? How do we know it's syntactically there? It's because it tells us information about the nature of the verb there and also the nature of the sentence, whether it's interrogative or not. Okay, so we say just plus tense if it is conjugated. If it's to, like I am happy for him, I was happy for him to pass here is not conjugated, which means that it's an infinitive, which means that the complementizer here has to have minus finite. Otherwise, if you feel that the sentence is conjugated, the verb there, the main verb there is conjugated, this means that what you have here is plus finite. Needless to say that plus WH, if you have a question here, and since we don't have a question or a paraphrase of the question, this one here is minus WH. I will give you other examples. This is just for revision. Okay, now let's go back, let's come to the main point. And the main point is that this, because the complementizer is responsible for the conjugation of this, its complement, the complement of the C0, is what we refer to as the inflectional phrase. And now let me talk to you about this inflectional phrase. Inflectional phrase, so when we say a noun phrase, it means what? It means the most important element there is the noun. For the complementizer phrase, C double bar or CP, the most important element is this, C0. And for IP, I mean, sorry, I think it's better to stand up, okay, like this. For the IPO, sorry, let me clean it. For the IP means what? So we have this, let's say she will travel. And then we have she travels. Okay. Back to my place for some explanation, and then I will start over. She will travel. Do we know the tense of this? Yes or no? Answer, yes, we do. We know the tense of this, which is the future. This is the future perfect. This is, sorry, the future, simple future. Express and will. For the second sentence, she travels. Is this verb conjugated? Yes. What tense is it? The simple present. Okay, nice. Another question. Can we tell whether, we have a singular or a plural here? Yes, we can, because of the S here. So there is what we refer to as agreement. An agreement in syntax means that the noun, I mean the subject, displays properties of plurality or singularity that have to fall on the verb. Perhaps in English, let's thank God that we have this S here. Otherwise, because English has lost a lot of its morphological, properties. But think of French, where you have these so-called declensions, déterminaisons, okay? E, S, E, I don't know. So, je mange avec un E, S, E, and then you have O, N, S, E, Z, E, N, T. These are features of agreement. When I say nous in French, it will never be nous mange. It's nous mangeons, and so on and so forth. All in all, there needs to be agreement. This is a universal requirement that there needs to be agreement between the subject and the verb, and this is what we know from grammar 1. So this agreement, now we will look at it from maybe a higher perspective in a sense, because, so here we are talking about the agreement between the verb and the subject. And here, look at this, please. What does it tell us? What do these examples reveal about the inflection as a category? Inflection now is an independent category. One argument for this is that this category attracts some tense and agreement features. For example, here we have a category here that is autonomous. In French, the future is not expressed independently. It's acclitic. It's something that sticks to the verb. So, je voyagerai, E-R-A-I, has to stick to the verb. In English, it falls on an independent category. Why? Again, because of the problem of the poverty. I put poverty, quote unquote, because I was criticized by some people thinking that I'm saying things bad about English. No. So because of the, impoverished nature of the morphology of the language. Okay. So here, futureness in French, it's expressed as auront, aurait, aurions, okay. And then in English, it's expressed on, it falls on this category. Look at this. She travels. Agreement in English is expressed on the verb, presumably because this is in third person singular is the only case that we have. But agreement generally sticks to the, even in Arabic, أنتما تذهبان أنت تذهبين إلى آخره. So here, as you can see, inflection has two configurations, indicating that it can be taken as one category. So this is one argument. So we have a category called infl or inflection, which bears the tense and agreement features of the verb. Do you understand? I hope you understand me. This means that this inflection, because it does this job, of course, it does another job that I will let you know right away. Sirabi' Fadil, thank you very much for this. And let me reiterate what I said last week. You are absolutely right, Sirabi. I saw that. Even if you have deleted this message, I saw it. And you are right. So those who want to analyze after 1992 with Pollock, they refer to this as a tense phrase, TP, tense phrase. And tense phrase, there is agreement phrase also, agreement phrase. There is also aspect phrase, aspect double bar, agreement double bar. But I abstract away from these details for the moment. And even my students, are aware. I don't know if I have some of them here. I use this. Another teacher may use this, and this is correct also. Okay, this is more detailed than this. Okay, so that's the idea. So you are absolutely right, C. Rabi' Fadil. I fully agree with you. Thank you very much for bringing this up. So let's close this bracket. Okay, never mind, Sirabi. I know that you've always been an assiduous student and a good one, very polite also. So thank you very much. Anyway, the facts I have mentioned earlier about agreement, make us think, or made linguists think that there is an independent category, okay, that receives these features of tense and agreement, okay, and this is called inflection. Okay, so let's now move on to the. Let me give you two examples, one from Arabic and the other from English. This way we understand things better. Is that fine? So let me stand up again and write the examples. Let's give an example from Standard Arabic and another one from English. Okay. Okay. Here, since you are in the context, so you have نشر الطالب المقالة. Is that visible there? I think it is. نشر الطالب المقالة. Okay. Okay. صادفت الطالبة. Okay. Okay, let's use this. Okay, let me sit down. Okay. My friends, I have here this word here. And I have the same word here. Is that fine? In the first case, what should this be? Should it be الطالب or الطالبة? It's الطالب. I'm sure you will say that because it's فاعل, it's the subject. You have to have this. And then صادفت, and then you have الطالبة. It has to be like this. Now, if I say نشر الطالب المقال, it's a mistake. نشر الطالب is a mistake. صادفت الطالب is also a mistake. Why? Let's orally, let me just say this orally, let these be here, but if I say, let's translate. The student has published an article. That's sentence one. The student has published an article. Sentence two, I met the student. Now, if we compare the two translations, we will find out that the noun phrase here has two shapes. Here it's an U and here it's an A. You understand or no? Here it's a talibu, here it's a taliba. But in English, what do we have? In English, we have student, the student. There is no change. Again, why and how and you see? Now, the difference is that the reason why we have this, as I told you, is that the morphology of Arabic is very strong. Arabic has strong morphological features that are able to change the shape of the noun. English is a language, maybe because it's an SVO, it has a fixed word order, and it's a non-pro-drop language. We will not get into these details, here, but suffice it to say that Arabic it has strong features. English, the features are not that strong. And English is a language that has lost a lot of inflections or, a lot of nominal morphology. Why? And we have we have a proof. So in English, take any noun that you want. When you put it as a subject, it does not change from when you put it in the verb position. You have my friend, for example. My friend. I invited my friend. My friend is nice. There is nothing that changes. Well, in Arabic, صديقي does not change. But look, let's use الرجل أو المرأة or whatever. You see? So sometimes it's الرجل مع الرجل. You have these movements, الحركات, we also call them حركات, okay, in Arabic. In English, no, it's fixed. We have the man, the man, the man. I invited the man. The man is my cousin or my brother. You see, I respect the man, etc. There is nothing that changes, which indicates that the morphology of Arabic and that of English are not the same. English, at a moment in time, arguably, the noun used to have this type of declensions, these types of endings. Okay? And these survive here. Look at this. They survive in two cases with some pronouns. Let's say, let me say this. Let's say you have excuse when you are late. Do you say excuse I or excuse me? Of course, you say excuse me. Why not excuse I? هذا رقم واحد. Now, if I replace I with the student, excuse the student, is it correct? Yes, of course. Now, can I say here, so here you say excuse me. Excuse I is not okay. When I say excuse you, can I say me excuse you? No, we say I excuse you. ولكن if I have excuse the student will excuse you. Perfect. This means that nouns that are not pronouns, nouns, lexical nouns, they have lost this morphology. Whether they appear after the verb or before the verb, nothing changes. This is unlike Arabic and maybe some other languages. In English, as I said, this survives this feature that we talked about when we talked about the Arabic example. It survives only with pronouns in English. And in German, I think the people who have started or who know about German, they have this, the first thing that they need to learn is dative and accusative and genitive. These are the features that we refer to. We refer to them as case. A noun can be in a number of cases. I repeat, for a noun to occur in a grammatical structure, it has to have case. كيفاش? It has to have case. If the noun, I'm sorry, if this is confusing, please tell. Okay. When a noun, you listen to this, please. When a noun is the subject of a clause, I repeat, when the noun is the subject of a clause, it is said to have a nominative case. Nominative case. So nominative case. Okay, good. Nominative case, it's always the subject. So whenever you have a noun as a subject in a grammatical sentence, make sure that that's, nominative case. Okay? Now, when the noun, so here, when it is a subject, when it occurs after the verb, we say that the noun has accusative case. Accusative. Accusative case. I'm sorry, my writing may not be okay. So here, after the verb, let's say, after the verb. Of course, we have other cases, but of interest for our purposes are these two, nominative, accusative. Okay? I will go to school. I has nominative case. Why? It's because it's the subject. My brother invited me. Me here has accusative case. One of the worries of the people, of the students, maybe the people who take up German in the first courses of German, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to learn the pronouns. Is it ich or mich, or is it du or dir or dich? You see, you have these, du, wo bist du? Where are you? But you have the famous ich liebe dich, ich liebe dich. You see, so here, why do we say ich in German? Ich liebe dich, but not mich liebe dir or something. It's because there is a case system here, okay, that is at play. Nouns that are in the subject position are nouns that have nominative case, okay? Nouns that are, in the post-verbal position, means after the verb, immediately after the object of the verb, have what we call accusative case. I hope you understand this. Okay. Now, if you do, what's the link between what we are supposed to cover now and what I have just said about case? Beyond the book says, please, what's the difference between accusative and ergative case? Here, accusative, ergative, these case systems are also, studied in semantics, especially the notion of ergativity. An ergative verb is a verb that can both function as a transitive verb and also as an intransitive verb. For example, you have John melted the sun. The sun melted the snow. You can also say that the snow melts. Here, you have the snow has ergative case. Okay, it's like the doer of the action, but not really the doer of the action. I read the text very easily, or this text reads very easily. So ergativity is more, concerned with the predicate. That's a semantic term, that gives ergativity to the argument, which in syntax is referred to as a noun phrase in the nominative case. Okay, so I close the bracket for this. So the reason why I have talked to you about case, you should know this at least, because I don't believe in giving complex information at once. No, but please, you have two things to know. Nominative case, accusative case, necessary. Now, why am I saying this? I am saying this because the category info, and for some other friends, it's a tense phrase or tense and agreement. So this category called inflection, which we said is autonomous, okay? This category info has a job. It was created to do a job in language. What is this job? It's created to assign, it's the one that assigns nominative case to the subject. I repeat. The category info or inflection as a category, as a head, let's say inflection as a head, the head info, it does two jobs. Number one, as I said, it bears the tense and agreement features. It bears tense and agreement features. Okay. Number two, it's a case assigner. It assigns nominative case to the preceding NP, that is to say, to the subject NP. Is that fine? Now, how do I know? How do we know that this is the case? There is an argument, my friends. Let me delete this, and then, okay. I would like to introduce a universal principle here that is known as, so there is a universal principle. My friends, there is a universal principle that applies to all languages without any exception that prevents a noun phrase. It prevents a noun phrase from being caseless. It means if you have a noun phrase, it has to be assigned case. Otherwise, the sentence in which this noun phrase occurs is ungrammatical. This principle is known as case filter. Case filter. Let me write it to you. Case filter. What does case filter say? What does case filter say? Case filter says we should not have a noun phrase if the noun phrase does not have case. In other words, no NP if NP is caseless. Let me write it. No overt means observable, NP if NP is caseless. Case filter says no overt NP. Overt means visible. The student is nice. The student is visible, so it's overt. مهم خلينا نقول لكم علاش. I will let you know why overt is important here. But please understand it this way. No overt NP if NP is caseless. It means if I have evidence that I have a noun phrase, but I cannot account for its case assignment, it means that my sentence is grammatical. Well, I know that you may not digest this easily enough. But let me add to this the fact that, sorry, I need your attention here, my friends. I need to add to this the fact that a noun phrase which is able to assign case, I'm sorry, I repeat. I need to add to this the fact that an inflectional head like I0, an inflectional head that assigns case to the noun has to be finite. نعود. Point one, قبل ما نشوفوا هادشي. Point one, we say that infl is important. Why? Because it bears tense and agreement features, رقم واحد, and also it assigns nominative case to the NP, to the preceding NP. I hope you understand me. هذا رقم واحد. Number two, if we have a noun phrase to which, for example, infl does not assign nominative case, we have an incorrect sentence, an ungrammatical sentence. Meaning what? So what is it? So we have here IP, for example, let's say we have I bar, and then I have I0. هذا هو الانفو. Okay? The job of this info is to assign nominative case to the NP that we have here, the subject. Okay? Because if it does not do it this way, if it does not assign to it nominative case, the sentence will be ungrammatical, because I have a filter, I have a principle saying that if you have a noun phrase, but if it's not case assigned, it's ungrammatical. تفكير مزيان. Okay, now, if that's point, perhaps this is another point I have to mention. It's very important, and I will repeat it because I know that it might take time, okay, before it is digested. If I have a finite verb, it means the inflection is finite. Finite means it's conjugated. For example, my brother invited me. Okay, that's conjugated. Yes or no? So we say that infl here is finite. My friends, can I say yesterday my brother to invite me? Is that possible or not? No, it's not possible. One syntactic, so in order to account for this ungrammaticality syntactically, we should say that yesterday my brother to invite me is ungrammatical, because my friend to invite me is wrong. علاش wrong my friend to invite me? Because to invite me is non-finite, بحال إلا désactivé. ما عندهاش أصلا لا تنس لا feature, désactivé, infinitive. فاقد الشيء لا يعطيه. أصلا هي infinitive. When you have something when you have this, infinitive, it's like it's closed, it's deactivated, it's like it's dead. Can it assign nominative case? No. Charity begins at home. It has to have its features first and then assign them. ولكن تقول لي شي حاجة minus tense minus agreement, like my brother, to invite me, the verb is not conjugated, which means that it's minus tense minus agreement. It cannot assign nominative case. Do you understand me? So we have to come to the second point, second rule here. اكتبوها عافاكم تما. Only finite infalls are able to assign nominative case. In other words, if inflection, if the I0, if the inflectional head is non-finite, it's equivalent to this head being deactivated or being dead. It's unable to assign case. How can you assign case? How can you give someone money when you don't have money yourself? How can you assign features when you don't have features? You have closed the door, Safi. You are non-finite. Smiley, you are non-finite. I hope you understand me. So, case assignment is done by info, yes, in response to case filter, because we should not have a noun phrase and you have a neighbor that does not assign nominative case to it. But this neighbor has to be, able to assign case, eligible for case assignment. Therefore, I to travel tomorrow is also not possible. Why? Because to travel is non-finite. And therefore, we have I0 inflection, which is, non-finite. It means it's not finite. It means it doesn't have plus tense plus agreement. It has the opposite. Minus ما فيها لا tense لا agreement هذه. You understand or no? So it is unable to assign nominative case to the NP. So only finite infalls can be case assigners. Non-finite infalls are not case assigners. They do not have these features themselves, let alone assign them to the neighbors. Charity begins at home, my friends. Is that okay? Good. So, given this state of affairs, we have reason to argue now that when we represent a sentence, as we will see right away, and we have a practical example. The subject of a clause, so when you read the sentence and you see that there is an NP which functions as a subject in the clause, that NP is the specifier of the IP, the inflectional phrase, or the TP as some of our friends call it. TP ولا IP بحالها. I'm saying that. Fine? Good. Thank you, C. Mustafa. I will read the others, but I will have summarized it there. Very nice. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's now represent a sentence like, for example, let's say John drove his car fast, and this will be both practice on what we do today and a revision of what we did before, and this will help the students, understand how to represent sentences using X-bar theory. So John drives his car fast. Let's try to do it here. John drives his car fast. Or drove, or whatever. All right, so we have it here. John drives his car fast. Okay. Fast. اللي سمعته قال لي fastly غيطبلوا كدابا. Okay. No. Because fastly does not exist. John drives his car fast. Okay, I hope I will be able to draw it while seated here. Okay, now I think, nice, it's good. So here, what do I have? The whole thing is a clause, isn't it? Yes, it is. So it's a CP. Fine? It's a CP. Complementizer phrase. علاش? Because we said before, with arguments, of course, that whenever you have a clause, it projects into a CP. بدون نقاش. So as long as I see a clause here, it's a CP. CP means complementizer phrase. And because it's a CP, we can also refer to it as a C double bar. Fine? So what I have here is a C double bar here. And it has a specifier, a spec, and this is empty. There is a rule, you may write it down. CP specifiers are universally empty. They exist only to receive moved WH phrases. Donc هذا كيكون خاوي اللهم إلى عندي WH phrase that comes from afar, and we will see why. Maybe we will do that now that the exams are drawing near. We will maybe with more frequency we will expose these information, this piece of information with more frequency. So this is empty. Now what is important is what we have to the right. I have a C double bar. Automatically, I should have what? A C bar. How? Because I have a C bar, I have a C-zero. Yes or no? Okay. Do I have a visible complementizer? No, I don't. ما عندي لا that, لا if, لا طن. Well, so I will use the features. What are the features that I have to have for this complementizer? I have to ask myself a question. Is the sentence finite? Yes, it is. So it's here plus finite. I mean, finite is the verb finite. Yes, it is. Hi, plus finite. Is this sentence an interrogative? No, it's not an interrogative. So it's minus WH. I have to write it here, minus WH. Okay, now I proceed. So, because the complementizer determines, because the complementizer determines the type of sentence I have, okay, it has to have as a complement, the complementizer has to have as a complement حيث هو اللي كيأثر فيه. دونك complementizer هو اللي كيأثر ليا في الكلوز. دونك هذيك الكلوز غادي نجي معاه نديرها complement of the C-zero. اوكي سو هذه غتاخذ لا فورم ديال I double bar اللي هي IP بلاتي نكتبها هنايا or IP or in some of my colleagues' classes, in different parts of the country, they use the TP or there are people who use T double bar. هادو بحال بحال. Do you understand? So call it an IP, it's fine. Call it a TP, it's fine. Call it an I double bar and a T double bar, no problem. Is that fine? So let's call it IP here, I double bar here. Okay, now this I double bar اللي عنده امتحان في هذا الشيء الله يخليكم. One tip, just one tip. When I have a subject in a clause, it automatically, without discussion, it has to be here. Subject هاد البلاصة ديالو هما هاد. If I am happy, I happy not here. But this projects into C double bar because we gave the argument about the importance of the C-zero. All right. So I have here I double bar and the specifier of an I double bar. This is general. قلنا بلي subject يكون هنايا. شنو هو subject now? What John? Yes or no? John is what? It's a subject, and the subject has to take the form of the noun phrase, given what we have here. So it's an N double bar. John is N double bar. Because I have N double bar, Latin double bar, it has to be well doubled, so that it will not confuse with N bar, okay? John, I have N double, because I have N double bar and I don't have a determiner, I have to have N bar, like this. And I have to have the head N0, and then I have to have John. Fine? مزيان. Okay. I have I double bar, which means here I have to have what? I bar. All right? I bar. هاي. موالين TP ولا T double bar هيكونوا T bar. Okay, fine. So I double bar and then I have I0. This I0 is a functional category. بحالها بحال هذا C0. So this is a functional category. This is a functional category, which means that they have to have features. Okay? Because we don't have looking at the will or should or may, it will fall here. But I don't have it here. Drives. So what do? Either write S here and later I write the drive because S is here because it's generated here, or just to be less confusing, we can choose. Both ways are possible anyway. I can write here plus tense plus agreement. When do I write plus tense plus agreement? If the verb is conjugated. If the verb is not conjugated, it's minus tense minus agreement. Before we finish the rest, let me stop here and say something. John here, is it grammatical to say John drives his car fast? The answer is yes, it is. It is grammatical. What is it that makes it grammatical here for John? What is that makes John grammatical? Because the answer is because it satisfies case filter. أشكون هو case filter? What is it? Case filter says you cannot have a noun phrase if the noun phrase is caseless. This noun phrase, is it caseless or not? ماشي caseless. لا, it has case. منين جابت الكيس؟ من جهة الكيس؟ It was assigned by I0 because we said before that infl is also a case assigner. It's the one that assigns nominative case. Its neighbor. So here it assigns to this nominative case. Can this assign nominative case? Yes. Why? Because it's finite. If this were a non-finite, it would not be able to assign nominative case. Why? It's because charity begins at home. Because it will not have the features itself, let alone assign them. Okay? So let's finish, please. So here, since I have I0, I am left with the verb phrase. VP, verb phrase. Okay, let me save some space here. So like this. And I have a verb phrase. It's a V double bar, right? V double bar. Why? It's because it has to be closed. So you have an infl which bears tense and agreement feature, and it gives them to the verb. See? It bears the features of the verb. It gives them, when I say he walks, he talks, the S move, it's not moves, but it falls on the verb phrase. All right. So it has to. So the V double bar, the verb phrase, is the complement of the inflection of I0. All right. So let's move now. So we have a V bar here. شنو في داخل هذا الفي bar? What does it have inside? We have the head, the verb. Do we have a complement here? Yes, we do. Do we have an adjunct? Yes, we do. The adjunct is fast because fast is an adverb. Even if it does not have li, it's like that, because it's an irregularity, but it cannot be explained by means of a rule. So the synonym, the rough synonym is quickly, violently, I don't know, you see, but you have to have an equivalent with li. So this fast here is an adjunct. Fine. So let me represent it. So do I have an adjunct? Yes, I take that into account. This is for the adjunct. Now I have because I have created a copy of the V bar here, but I should keep my original, this one. Okay. So this one here is V0 drives. Here it's for his car. So you have N double bar, you have determiner, his, and you have N bar, N0, and then you have car here. Sorry, it may not be visible. And fast, here it's adverb double bar, then adverb bar, then adverb zero, and then you have fast here. I'm sorry, the space does not permit. So this is the idea, ladies and gentlemen. All in all, just to summarize, what we have here is what we have covered today is the notion of the inflection. Inflection as a head, the inflection is an independent category for a number of reasons. For example, sometimes tense and aspect features fall on this independent category, like when you say will. Will is not attached to the verb. You have will as an independent word, which means you have an independent category. Is that okay? And as we see later, in I to C movement, will changes. For example, I will travel. Will you travel? When you ask a question. We will come to this later on. You see? So which justifies the idea that inflection, contrary to what traditional grammar used to say, that inflection is only something that attaches to the verb. No. There is good reason to argue that it's an autonomous, a self-contained category that does we can say on which we can say two things. Number one, it carries tense and agreement features. They fall here on this category, inflection. Number two, it has these features and it has this, it's generous, it assigns them. It assigns especially nominative case to, to the neighboring NP, which functions as the subject of a clause. Okay? Given these two properties, infl is taken to be the most important. It's the one that drives, it's the one that drives syntactic activity in a given clause, which means that it's elevated to the status of a head. And because it's an important element, it's a head, it has to have the zero level, the bar level, and the double bar level, as we have seen here. One point to retain, and this is a tip for the students who are attempting to answer questions on the day of the exam. If you want to check whether your tree diagram is well done or not, you have to find, apart from the tips I gave you, for example, double bar, zero, apart from this, you need to see the subject as a specifier of an IP. If you find it there, it's fine. If you don't find it there, the main subject of the clause, if it does not turn out in your representation, if it does not turn out to be the specifier of the IP, it means that your sentence is wrong. All right. So I hope it's clear. We will have further examples, of course, later on. Let me now go back to some of the questions that I have here about this issue. I think it's... look at what Natalie said, though we don't know who this Natalie is. Reveal your identity, Natalie. That you are a great professor is an evidence. Thank you so much. This is غادي تصروني هنايا في هذا اللايف عاوتاني نبقى نصحى راسي بصح I am okay, thank you very much. Anyway, Sirabia says in some books and lectures IP is yes, I fully agree. No, both are accurate, and TP is more recent, to tell you the truth. TP is more recent. Infl seems to be abundant, but some people, like me, I keep it for pedagogical reasons, because I would like the students to know about the basic architecture of X-bar theory. Later on, through their readings, maybe when they get to the master's program, they will learn about the split infl hypothesis, that's Pollock 1992, and they can enjoy reading about agreement phrase, tense phrase, and aspect phrase. So I have not shattered this category. I've not opened the Pandora's box, as they say. Okay, so both of them are accurate, so it's fine. It's a good thing. Mustafa, is there a sentence headed by an inflection? Can we refer to the sentence as an IP? Yes, of course. But look, an IP, شوف Mustafa. An IP, every sentence boils down to an IP, as long as a sentence contains subject and verb, and verbs are governed by, the infl. I mean, it's the infl that motivates the verb forms there. But the whole thing is determined by the complementizer, which means that if you have an IP, an inflection phrase, it has to have this upper layer of complementizer. It's necessary. So an IP is there thanks to the so a verb is there thanks to the IP. An IP is there thanks to the complementizer. Recent syntactic theory would say that the CP is there thanks to the focus phrase. The focus phrase is there, et ainsi de suite. Okay, so let's have this as just the highermost or the uppermost node is the CP, as long as you have a clause. CP as a layer, then you have IP as a layer, and then you have the VP. I repeat, CP, IP, VP. Okay, nice. Okay, so let's just, so here Mustafa has, his question has been answered. Sirabia says, thank you, sir. I deleted, okay, oh, so I'm reading something maybe that was written before. فتلقى آدم من ربه كلمات. Yeah, that's true. كلمات, I think, not كلمات. No. تلقى كلمات. So you كلمات, huh? You corrected that there, yes. Thank you, because كلمات is مفعول به, he's a direct object. So it has accusative case. Okay, so beyond the book, I like this beyond this name that you have chosen to yourself, beyond the book. That's critical thinking, right? So please, what's the difference between accusative? Oh, I answered this. I am harking back to something I said before. أهلا أستاذ اعتماد. Are you still with us here? She says, hello, professor. Hello, dear community. Hello, أستاذ اعتماد. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Mia Moore decided to delete her message. Is it because she feels that we did not answer the question, or I don't know? Please paste it again if you think it's still, you still need an answer to a question. Only, Mustafa Moshid says, only finite inflections are able to assign case. In other words, case assignment is done by infl. I fully agree. Thank you for summarizing it this way. Nice. So Zakaria, fastly. Yes, of course. So many people would say hardly and fastly. These are very confusing. There are some people who would say I work hardly. When you say you work hardly, it means you work once in a blue moon. You're not a good student. Okay, so you work hard. Okay, beyond the book says, for those who think that fast is an adjective and lovely is an adverb. Yes, that's true. So on the day of the exam, if you have words like these, always try to substitute them for their rough equivalents, and you will see, you will conclude about that. Yes, that's fine. So Hassan Aid Hamoud, thank you, Professor. Thank you very much, Si Hassan. Si Rabi, do we use tense plus agar? If we use TP plus tense, yes. Yeah, no, plus agar, because you have an egg. When you have, so the split infill hypothesis has what? It has layers again. Let's call them here sub-layers. And I don't use it partly for this reason, because you have, look, tense phrase, heading and aspect phrase, heading an agreement phrase, and in some languages it's the agreement phrase that comes first. You will get into a lot of theoretical debate, but you don't specify for plus tense for a plus agreement. One feature, if it's tense, it's plus tense, because you have an agreement phrase that will, the agreement zero will get plus or minus agreement. Okay, nice. So, Caria, to simplify it all, remember that tense appears as an inflection, sometimes overtly, sometimes covertly. That's very good. So tense is the inflection. I fully agree with you, Zakaria, Mustafa Mushid. So we can say inflection is always there, regardless of, yes, Mustafa, regardless of whether, the complementizer. These functional categories, sometimes they appear overtly, sometimes they are covert, and we just get to them through argumentation. Okay, thank you. So that's a very good thing. Yes. Okay. مصطفى مرشيد لا أستطيع هناك قراءتان واحدة فيها آدم فاعل. Oh, I'm sorry. So I really don't know. So that's why I was asking this question. Okay. Thank you for this information, C. Mustafa. Really nice of you. Thank you. Now we probably, if you think that we have done this, we have completed this, we check it, and then if you have things to say, we can discuss if you have questions about research, about linguistics, okay. Nathalie Leblanc, when we have negation, where it will be located in the tree. Look, Natalie, negation has been a subject of a lot of debate. There are people who would refer to that just as a negator, as a there are analyses that refer to the negator as a particle. Some of them put it as a specifier to the VP, the specifier of the VP. But there are other analyses that would project negation, as a negation phrase. It's neg P, neg phrase, negative bar, negative zero, etc. So it's not really settled. It's not really settled. I don't have a ready-made, answer to this question. As long as it's still under disagreement. One of the reasons why there is disagreement is that negation is sometimes in some languages, it comes as one particle, as one negator. For example, let's take English. He didn't go. But if you take French, elle n'est pas venue. You have double negation. It's not double negation in the proper sense of the term. You have negator one, negator two. If you come to Moroccan Arabic, memsha, sh, you have ma and sh. If you go to Tarifit, you have wa and then sh. What you see, sh, or what you see, sha. In Tamazight, Moyen Atlas, it's shower juicy, shower diddi, okay? Showri idda, wala uridi. And in Tashnahit, you have just one negator. Urdushki udakulin. Urdushki ugma qasa. You see? What you see sha dukrinu, what you see shauma, shower juicy, okay? And then you have urdushki. These negators, need an account that is accurate. And there is a famous syntactician by the name of Wa'li, who works, for example, maybe at an American university. I don't know whether he's in the USA or in Canada. His research is on negation. We have Professor Omari who worked on negation also. But these are subject to different analysis and interpretation. And just to add this, there is a famous principle that governs negation. What makes it even complex is that sometimes even the verb bears negation. Anyway, there is what we refer to as yes person's cycle. I don't know if you know. I'm not just answering Natalie here. And Natalie, I have answered her. It all depends. Some people put it as a specifier of the VP and then they leave. Others will say no. Negation has to be, has to project into a neg P. Okay, that has to govern neg 2 if you have two negators. So that's done. So I'm saying that it's not really settled. Maybe frameworks like optimality theory are better equipped, to treat negation, maybe more thoroughly. Otherwise, you will always have these recalcitrant data. But let me say something about negation. That's general knowledge. There is a well-known account for negation that provides perhaps that's a diachronic account of negation in all languages. And this is what I have personally observed in the languages that I know. This is known as Jesperson's cycle. Jesperson's cycle. I don't know. Let me write it here as a comment. Jesperson. Jesperson's cycle. What does Jesperson's cycle tell us? Jesperson's cycle talks about the historical development of negation in languages, and Jesperson's works, revealed very important facts about negation in languages. Jesperson said, or argues, that languages initially start with one negator. Like English, I didn't go. Okay, one negator. And then over the years, there is a need to focus, to put emphasis that we are negating. Maybe because we are angry, because we want to insist, because you see, we want to say really it's a no, no, we negate something. So native speakers in different languages realize that it's not enough to have just one negator. That's why a second negator is created to focus the first one. This is what we have in French. We have pas, ne pas, je ne sais pas, je ne sais pas. There is a proof that in some expressions in French, that come from Old French, we find out that there are sentences just with one negator. For example, je ne saurais vous le dire. Where is pas? It does not exist. You see? So this is but what in normal sentences, je ne sais pas vous dire blah blah blah. Or je ne peux pas. Saurait, even if it comes from savoir, ça peut signifier pouvoir. But that's something apart. And there is slight difference between the French spoken in Belgium and that spoken in French. But in any case, so we have here in French, you have the two negators, the initial one, which is ne, and then pas. According to Jespersen, over the years, the first negator is lost in favor of the second negator. Okay, so the cycle now is complete because you have one negator and then two negators and then one negator. And this is evidenced also in French, in colloquial French. Au lieu de dire je ne peux pas partir, je ne vais pas partir, je vais pas partir, je vais pas partir, je peux pas te dire. Okay? Je peux pas manger. Okay, so you have this, oh, did I say Hesperson? I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Cancel that, please. It's not a Hesperson, it's Jesperson. It's just a typo. Thank God I saw that. Okay. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, it's Jesperson like this, not a Hesperson. It's not Hesperson, it's Jesperson. Okay, please correct that. Thank you. So we have, this to be put between brackets, and in Moroccan Arabic, mejash. So you have mejash, and historically in Moroccan Arabic, the sh part did not exist. Okay, and we have that in some proverbs, in some expressions. For example, makla mashrab, because this is very, very old. This pattern is very old. It survives now. Mashi makla mashrab, makla mashrab. Okay, and you have it in Terifit, Weishi, Weiswi. Okay, Urichaur as well. That's what you have in other dialects. And characteristically, in Tamazight, verb sh, native speakers, they take the second negator and they put it before the first negator. Instead of saying Wa-ishi-sha, Wa-ishi-sha means he did not eat. In Moyen Atlas, Tamazight, Zemmour, for example, they would say Shawrishi, Shawarjusi. It means Wudyusisha. For the southern dialects, in the Sus region, they don't need this sha altogether. It's just Urjushki. That's all. Okay, so I put this between brackets. I hope that this has been, beneficial anyway, piece of information. Just keep it at the back of your mind. Look, you never know when a piece of information becomes useful in your lifetime. There are things that you learn maybe in this live or at, in next session that you have, and it will not be, it will come in handy, after 10 or 20 years from now. You never know, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, my friends, do you have, okay, when we have a negation, so Nathalie, I think, and this coincides with your name, Nathalie Leblanc, we gave examples from French. Okay, so you read about these, I think you will find a way of you may subscribe to one of the models, but it's highly debatable. All right, Si Mustafa, Nathalie, I believe negation belongs to the next phrase. Yes, one analysis, Si Mustafa, it's one analysis. All right. Zakaria says negation is a touchy subject, especially in Arabic. Yes, because it has far-reaching, it has ramifications in the analysis. Okay, no hablo in Spanish. Je sais pas pourquoi vous avez dit no hablo. Ah, no hablo, you're using negation in Spanish. Yes, no hablo in Spanish. You have in Spanish and also in languages that do not have negation one and negation two. Just for you, when you have neg one, neg two, like French ne pas and ma and then che, we call this negative concord. Okay. The other one, sometimes you have like anywhere, I didn't go anywhere, here helps, goes with negation. That's negative polarity. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Do we have further questions to ask? And now that 2 hours have elapsed, is there anything that you would like to ask, maybe, or anything you would like me to elaborate on, or is there any? You might choose to ask for an opinion, for a reaction. That's fine. I can afford some more time with you. If you think that you are tired, you are only 18 here. And I see that you have not shared this enough. So please do right now, if you can. I mean, those who can, you have groups, you share the groups, and those of you who have not liked, the page and this live, please do that, because that helps spread this page. Okay. Before, and waiting for some of your questions, if there are any, let me just make the point that because the exams are drawing near, I will, because sometimes I receive requests on Messenger, requesting, for example, reviewing Introduction to Linguistics, because some departments, they study phonology, morphology, etc. And I have the intention of starting phonology very soon, but with the understanding that we will not give up on syntax, which means that maybe, despite the fact that I have a very tight schedule, you see, this month, especially this month, and the next one as well, but I will always, reserve these 1 hour or 2 hours for a live. I will do my best to maybe either every other day or every day, but anyway, you will learn that, from the post. Okay, Zakaria, best of luck. Thank you very much, Zakaria. Thank you. Mustafa says, what do you think of phonological awareness as far as ELT is concerned? Well, it's a sine qua non. In fact, I would say, maybe it's a strong statement, but it's really it's necessary, because the first contact you have with your student is, especially if you teach at high school, for example, the ones who teach at high school, but also at the university. The first question you get from your students, sometimes in Arabic, the first question, typical question, is what's the difference? Is there a difference between British English and American English? That's number one. You may have a question, why is it that in British English we say never and not never? Why is it that it's worked and not worked? See, they can ask, why is it that, for example, we say the Moroccan, but the American? So here, the teacher needs to be equipped with, not only with phonological awareness, but also different techniques for teaching this phonological component. Of course, in the syllabi, I mean, at high school, there are no units reserved for phonology, but, maybe within each unit, there are activities that target pronunciation. So the teacher should be there to, thanks probably to the phonological awareness that he has acquired, he or she can maybe explain with a lot of ease, provide explanations with a lot of ease when it comes to these issues. Okay. So thank you, Mustafa Murshid. Yes, that's what I think about, phonological awareness. A teacher has to be, I'm not saying encyclopedic. I'm not saying he has to know everything. We do not know everything. There is no one who can claim that he knows everything. See, but there is a minimum that we need to know. There are occasions, I mean, when you can express the fact that you don't know how to answer a question, but this should not repeat. You are there. You need to be equipped with, these tools. All right. Beyond the book says in Italian language, for example, they say, "Questa pizza non mi piace niente." Also, double negation to put emphasis on it. Let me say that. Questa pizza non mi I wish you would. I tried my best. Questa has to do with request pizza, yes, but the rest, no. Niente, maybe for no. And then you have or non piaccio di mangiare pizza. Uh, is it no with I cannot eat the pizza? I think that's what you have there. So where is the double negation here, my friend? It would be better if you could, translate that literally so that we can see these double negation. Thank you very much for this contribution. See beyond the book. C. Zakaria says, I have been long thinking about experimental syntax in Morocco as a field of study. Experimental syntax, if you mean, are you alluding to maybe aphasia and disorders? Yeah, there are some people who talked about that. I think that's what you are alluding to. Otherwise, I don't know where you can apply experimental syntax. Maybe when applied to cases like these, like Alzheimer's disease and people with brain injuries, yeah, it's a very interesting, area of research. But you need someone who is specialized, and you probably need to have access to patients. If Zakaria, you mean what I have just said about what you called experimental syntax. Okay, so or non piacio di mangiare, no and 90. Okay. Good to know. Thank you very much. Thank you. I did not know that because I don't know why I have this. I always take Italian to be as transparent as is Spanish, but I have proved myself wrong because I could not even understand. I claim that I understand some sentences in Spanish, but I couldn't make it for this Italian example, which means that it's not as transparent as I often imagine. All right. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Beyond the Box. Zakaria says, we only deal with language processing in language disorders, but never seen it in healthy adults. Yes, but I just wonder how you can study that, Mr. Zakaria. Okay, in healthy adults, how are you going to? Maybe you probably need instruments to check the processing in terms of the milliseconds. Yes, this was done, but not in Morocco. It was done since the 60s in the USA. For word processing and sentence processing, and well, you just need to have a specialist who works on that. That's really interesting, of course. Mustafa says there is an article entitled "How Not to Be a Fluent Fool: Understanding the Cultural Dimensions of Language." The idea is mastering the cultural dimension of language use is as important as language. I fully agree with this, and this would move us to the study to the discussion of the pragmatic component, and also to the fostering of cultural awareness in an EFL classroom. There is a very important study that I recommend to read if you can find it by my former supervisee, Professor Karim Belhiyani. He produced an outstanding, thesis on intercultural communicative competence. So I think he's better equipped to talk about this. But overall, language and culture are inextricable to the point that elements of culture need to be taught in the Moroccan, not in an EFL curriculum, whatever it is. Okay, decontextualizing language from its cultural aspects would produce maybe a speaker who masters grammar rules but fails to communicate. This is what we call communication breakdown sometimes, or pragmatic failure. So that's absolutely right, Si Mustafa. Thank you very much. What are the criteria for a good dissertation? Natalie asks. The criteria of a good dissertation is that because there are jury members, I assume, Wallahu a'lam, that I can tell whether a dissertation was given enough time or not. The worst that can happen to a doctoral student is to leave things until the end. هذه ما خصهاش تكون هذه. Even if you are competent, even if you know the topic very well, you should not, you should start on day one, honestly. And the writing needs to be revisited. So, what are the criteria of a good dissertation, Natalie? If the objectives are clear, that's the first one. I'm giving you my criteria because I read a lot of theses. I have so many stacked there, and I have to write a couple of reports in the next 2 days. Whether the objectives are clear or not, whether the title is Malcolm Ali titre. My friends, some of my friends, maybe they leave it as the last thing. No, the title has to be, or sometimes because they are pressed to maybe to be admitted in the doctoral program, they submit a proposal with a title that needs a lot of revision, and they keep the same title until the day of the defense. And you have jury members. Why are you giving the chance for jury members to say things about your title? If there is one thing that should not be criticized, it's the title. And they are right when they criticize you for the title. It's the first thing that you see. It should not involve a mistake. The variables there should be reflected in your title, and the title should make good sense. Should make sense. Okay, هذا titre, هذا le titre. Then the formulation of your objectives. Because the first question, it happens to us members of the jury. I take part in a lot of these defenses, and you always hear, sometimes just behind the scenes, someone asking, "What's the point in this dissertation?" I don't know what the point is. So please work out your objectives and make them stand out, and bring the reader to them and make them interested. Very easy to do that. So it only takes time. رقم واحد. Also, because the objectives part, it can be read by other people very easily. So don't worry. It's not like giving them 2 chapters to read. They may not have time, etc. They can check objectives with you on the spot. So objectives need to be clearly written. And I'm talking about the major, characteristics of a good thesis. This is number 2, whether the methodology is sound and whether you analyze your data correctly. These are broad characteristics. But an excellent dissertation is also one that is characterized by a lot of clarity. It's easy to, I always say that, it's easy to complicate life. You may be specialized in an issue that is technical, and that the members of the jury may not all be aware of that, because we do not, jury members do not. If you work on optimality theory, not all the members of the jury, are linguists, specialized in optimality theory. So you have to it's your job to make every single point clear. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader. You see, clarity is a crucial point. Needless to say that your dissertation has to have what we call face validity. Face validity. It means without even reading it, when I take the thesis and look at it, it looks like a thesis. For example, the paragraphs are well aligned, and there is a mistake that is repeating so often. I would like you to avoid it if you are working on your doctoral thesis, ladies and gentlemen, or for that matter, any thesis. It's the fact that you find one paragraph with 4 lines. You see, شوفوا حفاكم. And there are many paragraphs with 2 lines and a half. This is something that cannot be accepted. A paragraph, write a paragraph. You are a researcher. You can't write a paragraph. You see, so the things that you write in 3 lines, you can extend it and produce 5, not 5, maybe 7, 8 lines. Look how beautiful it is when you see that the page contains real full paragraphs. It's very different from saying a thesis which is fragmentary and which includes three lines and then 2.5, and then it's very journalistic. Don't do that, please. So it has to have face validity. Face validity also includes appendices, includes how you order your sections. And I'm not saying this is challenging. It's not challenging at all. It only takes you, or for that matter, any researcher, to work on a continuous basis. Safi. So these are the criteria for a good thesis. Okay, thank you. All right, I have answered. Was it Natalie who asked this question, I guess? So beyond the book, I read that. Natalie, yeah. And then we have Si Mustafa. Can you please talk about the IMRAD format in research? For those who are not familiar with it, it's mnemonic for major components of a paper, namely introduction, methods, results. Yeah. Well, Si Mustafa, there is this, but there is also the fact that you talk to your supervisor, and there are probably section reorderings that the supervisor would like to see. But generally, you have this introduction, as you said rightly, abbreviated or acronymed, if I may say so, as IMRAD. So, which is what? It's introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And this is what the research process is about. For the students who work here, this moves me into, because that's why I avoid this IMRAD, because there is this difference between people conducting quantitative data analysis and qualitative data analysis when it comes to the methodology chapter. Not all dissertations need to have a methodology chapter. And this is a mistake that so many students make, presumably because they do not talk to other people. شتي كيقول لك اللي كيخدم بوحدو كيشيط ليه ولا كيحسب بوحدو كيشيط ليه راه مالو. See, talk to people who are specialized in the field. How can you what now just imagine, ladies and gentlemen, you work on the you analyze, for example, an aspect in nominal morphology in Moroccan Arabic. See, let's say, or you analyze agreement in Moroccan. Let's say agreement in Moroccan Arabic. Very easy to remember. What are you going to include in a methodology chapter? Do you need a chapter in the first place? No, you don't. Why? Because especially if you are a native speaker, do you need to collect data from 100 people? Do you need to sample? No. Because your research has taken another orientation. All that you can do is, in one short paragraph, one small section at best, you can say that you have relied on your introspection, your intuition, in your capacity as a native speaker. And you may even say that you have consulted with the people around you, maybe 5 middle-aged or old people, male and female. Does it need a chapter to write this? No, of course not. No, you need to do that maybe at the level, right at the introduction. And that's it. You don't need a methodology chapter at all. You analyze, every chapter can go for an aspect of what you analyze, but not for methodology. See, methodology for quantitative analysis. Why? Because there is always this question of how did you collect your data? Did you use the right sampling technique? Are your conclusions reliable because you based on this number rather than this number? Did you select from one place or from another? What are the instruments that you use for data collection? You describe the instruments. Are they reliable or not? What statistical measures, and so on and so forth. And they can fit in the methodology chapter. And it is necessary in quantitative data. But for an example, like someone who works on morphology or on syntax, pragmatics of Moroccan Arabic, for example, or pragmatics, you may have that. But when it is in second language, see, you may have a small instrument. you know, the hardest thing you can do there in data collection is to have to put a few native speakers, a few, I said, maybe three, four, five, and ask them to judge and or just listen to them when they spontaneously produce talk. And of course, you can use also your own introspection in your capacity as native speaker, but not the methodology chapter. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So we only did okay. So we have C. Lazraq saying, thank you, Professor. Could you please suggest some steps to follow when building a study or a thesis objective based on the findings of a previous research conducted by the same author? Objectives based on the findings of a previous research conducted by the same author. Okay. Yeah, for thesis objectives, very easy. It's better to, when you consult preliminary references that will lead to you formulating your objective, it's a good idea to check the starting points of these authors that you have checked. What are their objectives? How did they go about them? Sometimes you need to skim through the article or through the book. It does not mean that you need initially from the beginning to read it cover to cover. So no, just get the main thing there. Maybe you can jot down the objective of each author, and you can see, based on that, you can determine the aspects that have not been investigated. And you can ask, if you are a keen researcher, it means you are taking it seriously. If you enjoy what you are doing, you will be interactive, you will not be passive, you will be an active reader. So you will read critically and you will say, well, how come that they worked, they took into account, they studied this variable and this variable in this context, and they forgot this variable. So you will come and say, and you add that variable, and you can formulate your objective. Objectives, needless to repeat, need to start with two. Not in a paragraph. In a paragraph, it will not be visible. It will be visible neither to you nor to your reader. See, objectives تكون يبدأ بتو. Objective 1, to do this. Objective 2, to do this. Not, you should not just sew them in a paragraph and then leave the reader to his or her own devices. Okay, so this is generally what we do. We go to other people's objectives and see what we can add and the variables that we can add. And maybe sometimes we can choose just to see whether they can apply to the Moroccan context. And you can provide a rationale for that. For example, the Moroccan context is different from the context in which you have read. You can refer to class size, you can refer to the type of curriculum, you can justify this. So there are all sorts of ways you can do this. Okay, Mustafa says, can you please talk about the importance of the conceptualization and operationalization of variables in research, beginning from research design to thesis writing up? Okay, so let me just, Mustafa, provide you with a short version of the answer in this regard, for the simple reason that this prompt or this question can lead to a discussion that is likely to take a lot of time. So operationalization is necessary because when you have a variable that you set off to investigate, one thing you need to be sure of is that you will not deal with it in all its aspects. So it's always good to say, I will study this first aspect, the second aspect, the third aspect. You should be able to tell, that aspect 4, aspect 5, no, I will not analyze. That's what we call operationalization. All right. For example, when we talk about a concept as broad as achievement, let's say linguistic achievement or language achievement. Language achievement is so broad that it spans phonetics, phonology, morphology, writing, speaking, accuracy, appropriacy, pragmatics, semantics, and everything. 30 questions. Some of these questions are direct questions, but other questions, they are open-ended. Where you ask the student, for example, to fill in, to answer in the form of a paragraph. Because you are overambitious, you want information, you want to collect data, you do that. So in order to see if this is feasible or not, you need to try these instruments before distributing it to the 120 students, you try your instruments on 3 or 4 people or 5. And you can, so this administration, preliminary administration or piloting with 4 or 5 people will give you feedback, will give you information whether there is a mistake in you because you constructed the questionnaire. They can give you feedback about the timing, whether it's enough or not, about the instructions, whether they are clear or not. They will also give you feedback about whether using open-ended questions and enforcing them to write paragraphs, and when you use a lot of open-ended questions, is it a good idea or not? So all this will make you introduce some modifications in your questionnaire. This is the pilot study. Okay, so it's one way of getting feedback. So it's a good idea, especially if you have this quantitative approach. You see, you need to do the piloting. That increases the reliability of your work and its validity as well. Okay, nice. Can you talk about the importance of the on a parler? Okay. Pilot study. Natalie says conclusion of previous research in order. So can we rely on the conclusion of previous research in order to find? Yes, that allows us. That's true, Natalie. Yes, Natalie Leblanc. After all, research is ongoing. It's continuous. We do not, wake up in the morning and start theorizing completely new ideas. No, we need to base our starting point, needs to be where someone else has ended. So the best way of determining your research gap, finding research gap, and formulating, therefore, on the basis of that, your objectives, yes, I fully agree with you. It's by looking at what has done previously and what people concluded previously. Also, in the conclusion of so many theses and so many studies, people refer to their limitations. So that's an opportunity for you. When you read limitations of the research, you can take those limitations and build on that. Okay, you can find a research gap there. All right, good. I also want to hear your thoughts. Okay, on parler. Okay, Natalie, I answered you. Natalie, I guess we should rely on the limitations. That's true, Si Mustafa. That's true. Very good. That's true. That's absolutely right. Good. Yeah. It's because we cannot, we are not in when you conduct a doctoral study, or for that matter, any study, you are not asked to revolutionize the field. No. You may do that later on, but it's an exercise in doing research. It's an exercise in doing research. Do something you can manage, but do it correctly. Do it appropriately. That's what counts. People will not judge you on whether your research is small scale or large scale, or whether you have that fat thesis, whether you have 700 students. Wait, no, it's not. That's not what counts. You may work with a smaller sample size and fewer objectives and fewer variables, but you do that in an elegant way, in an elegant enough way. That's what counts. That is to say, you do what a good researcher does in the process. In the doctorate journey, that's a learning journey. A learning journey where you know how to write an academically acceptable report on a study. And the dissertation is an excellent example of a report on a large on a study, on a given study, of course. Yes. Are there further points to make? You will let me know if there are suggestions, questions. I can still answer them. Otherwise, we call it a live. Okay, and then we will meet. By the way, I don't know. You are likely to choose Saturday for the next live, where I don't know whether I will. So please, if you are interested in starting phonology, for example, we can start it on Saturday. Otherwise, we will move to movements. We will start with I2C movement, inshallah, and then we will see what to do afterwards. But anyway, these live sessions will continue hopefully. But for the contents, it's up to you to let me know what contents you would like me to share with you. All right. In terms of, Mustafa says, in terms of data measurement, do you think that people's attitudes should be measured using ordinal or interval scales? This will all depend on your objectives, Mustafa. For example, if you would like to run a correlation analysis or a regression analysis, for example, if you have in your hypothesis something students' motivation will have an impact on, so قلتين على motivation لا attitudes. Okay, attitudes. Students' attitudes will impact their performance, and to run correlation or regression, you need to produce interval scale data. That's for sure. But again, this will heavily depend on the formulation of your objectives. I would say both. Yeah, but initially, even if you run regression and you make your you measure your variable on an interval scale, that will come after. The first step is to measure them on an ordinal scale first. Strongly agree, neutral disagree, strongly disagree, and then you use the compute variable function on SPSS to group question 1 to question 7, for example, under the rubric of attitudes. And the consequence of this, because the computer will add up the scores, the consequence of this is a continuous variable, which is an interval scale, of course, because continuous means interval and ratio, and they are known as scale on SPSS. Okay, good. I don't know if you have further questions. Please do not forget to share the link to this page with the people that can be interested. And if you have groups on WhatsApp or on Facebook, wherever, please insert the link with a sentence asking, I liked, what a student at another university did, because she sent a screenshot of the way she addressed her classmates in درجة هذا البروف كيشرح I like that. So thank you once again. If you are here, I don't even remember her name, but thank you very much. It's really kind of you, because you are doing this favor to your friend. Because if I receive questions asking me to talk about phonology, I can do that. Morphology, I can do that. I don't claim that I know everything about these, but what I guarantee is maybe to introduce things in a simple way, because it's maybe what we need is this simplicity, and then you can capitalize on that yourselves. Thank you. So thank you very much, dear professor, for the very informative presentation. Thank you so much, C. Mustafa, very active with me here. Thank you. And I think it's high time we stopped. It's in 20 minutes, it will be midnight. I have a lot to do before, bedtime. You see? So let's meet on Saturday, inshallah. Whether to continue with this or to do phonology, to start phonology, will depend on the messages I will receive. If I fail to receive a message, then we will continue with syntax. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, C. Mohamed Al-Zraq, Nathalie Leblanc, C. Mustafa. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's call it a live today. Thank you and have a good time.